Watching TV has changed over time. Streaming has become the new norm. That's why Golden State Media Concepts Television Podcast dives headfirst to the world of cord cutting. Want to be on the loop of what's hot in Netflix? Or if it's not a preference, what about original shows in Hulu? We've got you covered. Join us as we fill in the blank and talk about movies to stream and what show you should be binging. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Television Podcast.
Hey, how you doing? Y'all like that music? That's all I know how to play, so you're going to hear it a couple more times. Hello, everyone out there in podcast land, and thank you for tuning in once again to the GSMC Television Podcast. We're part of the mighty GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Howard Fletcher, and I'm very, very glad to be here with you today. Got a big show on tap. We'll be hitting some of the repercussions of the coronavirus situation and the effect it's going to have on the rest of 2020. Sony Playstation is developing a television series that's based on one of its games. So they're trying to take over your screen. So when you stop playing your video game, you're going to have to watch their TV series. RuPaul.
Yes.
Will have to park his RV somewhere else because his show is coming to an end. I'm going to talk about that. And Dispatches from Elsewhere, well, that show's going places. And last but not least, I have a very, very special guest who's coming up at the end of the show. And we're going to be talking about HBO's Outsider, which aired its finale this past Sunday night. It has been a very great and interesting show, and I hope you enjoy that conversation. But first, I'm going to give you more from the mouse. More specifically, the Mouse House. And I'm talking about Disney Plus. Disney Plus has revealed what it's going to release when they launch in the UK and in Ireland. And this includes more than 500 films, some 350 television series, and a slate of 26 original features. As expected, because Disney Plus bought the whole Marvel universe, it's going to launch with 30 films and some 50 Marvel series. Now, I had no idea Marvel had produced 50 series. I knew they had a lot of animated stuff, and they had some live action, but there's apparently at least 50, because that's what's going up on Disney Plus in the UK. And it will include Avengers Endgame, Black Panther, Captain Marvel, and Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And which are all, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is a pretty good show. The Skywalker Saga from Star Wars, that will be available in full force, with 8 Star Wars films available at the time of the launch. The only film that won't be available at the time of the launch will be, yes, you got it, Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. I've yet to see The Rise of Skywalker, but from what I understand, you can wait for it. It's going to be arriving at a later date. The entire collection of the Star Wars Clone Wars, and I haven't seen the entire collection, but I've seen maybe 3 seasons of it. It was an animated series. Very well done. That's going to be part of the package. And also the spin-off series, The Mandalorian, which premiered earlier this year, right around the time when they launched Disney Plus in this country. That'll be available as well. That's from writer-producer Jon Favreau of Swingers fame. He's also Tony Stark's sidekick in the Marvel movies. And he's going to be doing some more movies for J.J. Abrams and the Star Wars folks, and maybe he'll get that back on track. Meanwhile, all 30 seasons of The Simpsons will be available in that package, and the 31st season is going to be available at the beginning of November. That's big. And for a period, there was a question mark. Now, we're hanging over the future of the show in the UK because in the UK, The Simpsons are aired on Sky, which is a network over there like Fox is over here. However, it's emerged that the show will remain on the pay TV station operator, which is Disney Plus, as well as on the other one, which is a non-exclusive. So, you can watch it wherever you want to. You cannot escape The Simpsons. The package is going to have about 20 Pixar features, including Toy Story 4, which I happen to see in the theater. It is the only Toy Story movie I've ever seen in the theater. Went with my girlfriend who has seen all 4 of the other features. I have to admit, I was quite moved by the end of the movie, to my surprise. And I will admit that to no one unless you listen to my podcast. So now you know. And Finding Nemo will also be on there too, with good old Ellen DeGeneres' voice. And it's going to stream alongside some new shorts from Pixar. One called Lamp Life, which is a short of that the Pixar logo lamp. And Pixar in Real Time, which is a live action series that brings Pixar characters into the real world. That sounds terrifying to me, but I'm sure there's an audience for it somewhere. I would be a little scared if I saw Pixar's character in the real world. Other Disney Plus originals will include High School Musical, the series. That title has 2 colons in it. It's High School Musical, the musical, the series. First time I've ever seen that. The World According to Jeff Goldblum, which sounds like another horror feature. Lady and the Tramp, and The Imagineering Story. National Geographic titles will include a BAFTA-nominated short called Jane, maybe about Jane Goodall, I'm assuming, and Sundance is a Sundance Award-winning movie called Science Fair. And it'll also, National Geographic will also have a series called One Strange Rock, which I'm sure is about planet Earth, which is hosted by the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Will Smith. And that's about it from the mouse. I just like to keep you up to date with Disney Plus because I'm keeping my eyes on that juggernaut because they have a lot of cash and they are taking over market share by getting a bunch of subscribers. But they're like I said in my last show, they haven't really developed a whole lot of original content. But I think once they get a foothold of subscribers, they certainly have the capital to invest in making a lot of new shows. So that'll be interesting to watch. Also this week, a lot of shows are starting or returning this week, this next coming week. One of them is one of my favorite shows, Westworld, is coming back to HBO. Westworld Season 3. It's been 21 months since the end of Season 2, so it's about time. It's going to open its 3rd season in a different place outside of the park for those of you who watch the show. I'm not going to spoil anything because it's worth the watch and it's the type of show that you don't want to get spoiled. It has a lot of twists and turns. You should just watch it cold. 2 of the best female characters on television, recent television, Dolores and Maeve, Evan Rachel Wood, and Tandy Newton are going to be returning in their roles. Tessa Thompson is another returning cast member. We're not quite sure who she's going to be playing, though. That's what kind of show it is. And Aaron Paul is going to be a new cast member. We never saw him before because apparently he lives outside of the park. He is the actor from Breaking Bad. He played Jesse Pinkman, and also he was in El Camino, and he played the same character. You may also know him from, I think he was in Big Love, which is another HBO show that I have to make time to watch because it's supposed to be pretty good. Other shows that are going to be returning one's on National Geographic Channel. It's called Cosmos. Cosmos, A Space-Time Odyssey, aired about 6 years ago, and now they're finally coming back with a follow-up called Cosmos Possible Worlds. That was a really good series, A Space-Time Odyssey, so you may want to tune in to Possible Worlds. The final series of Tyler Perry's If Loving You Is Wrong begins Tuesday at 10 p.m. on the OWN channel. Thank goodness. Now, there's a channel called Spectrum. Spectrum is one of these cable or streaming packages, like all the rest. I don't know many people who have Spectrum. I do not have Spectrum, but they're doing some original programming too, and one of them is a show called Temple. And Temple is a British import, and so which means that it probably aired over in Britain on cable TV, on regular TV. But it stars Mark Strong as a surgeon who runs an illegal medical clinic in abandoned tunnels of the London Underground, treating criminals while trying to find a cure for his wife's terminal illness. Again, whoever pitched that show, talk to me, because I think you can sell mine. Catherine McCormick plays his wife. I have not seen her or recognized seeing her since she played William Wallace's main squeeze in Braveheart. And The Bachelor finale comes on, which promises another dramatic ending, because if it wasn't dramatic, no one would watch it. So next, I'm going to talk about the coronavirus, and we're going to talk about what effect it's going to have on our TV viewing for the rest of the year. I'll be right back.
Want to know the latest and hottest music hitting the airwaves? Don't be left out. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Music Podcast. Keith keeps you on the loop with everything you need to know from pop, rock, hip-hop, and the top 40. And we'll throw in news of your favorite artists, concert and tour dates, and so much more. Listen no further, because this is the gold standard in music podcast.
Okay, this is a segment I'm going to call Broken News instead of Breaking News, because it's something that's already happened. Happened last week by the time you guys are hearing it. But I want to talk about it because all these things happened suddenly, very suddenly. It's going to have a big effect on television production and the entertainment industry as a whole during the year of 2020. Last week, on probably the 2nd or the 3rd, which was in Monday or Tuesday, MIP TV was canceled. MIP TV was canceled. And what that is an entertainment convention that takes place in Cannes, same place as the Cannes Film Festival over in France. Some people call it Cannes. I call it Cannes. I don't know. I'm not French, so you tell me how to pronounce it. I'm going to call it Cannes. And this is a big deal. It's almost like South by Southwest. You have a lot of media companies like Canal, BBC, Sky that come over there, and they not only premiere productions and series and sell them sometimes to other companies, but you have a lot of producers there. A lot of money comes over there, and people are pitching ideas. So they'll try to see if they can get either a script produced, or they'll come with a short film trying to make it into a larger film. You have a lot of filmmakers there who are trying to get some backing for their projects. And that's where we get a lot of this content, ultimately, that comes over to us from Europe. And we've seen that Netflix and Amazon Prime and Hulu have been acquiring a lot of these productions and putting them on. And they're very popular. I mean, like I've said before, that's one of the reasons why I really started, using Netflix in the first place, because they had a lot of good international content. That is canceled. It was supposed to be March 10th to the 13th. They have another one, a shorter convention under the same umbrella that's supposed to take place on June 2nd to the 5th. That's more involved with music than it is with media like film and video. And television. However, they do the same thing there, and some projects get put together during that second phase. So it's going to affect the industry. So that cancellation brings me to South by Southwest, which I talked about in my last episode last week. It was right when I was recording that episode that Amazon informed South by Southwest that they would not be sending their entertainment division there because of coronavirus. They were going to send the other people there from Amazon, which I guess were going to show the latest Alexa gadgets and that type of thing. But they did pull everyone else Amazon related that was going to go. Well, soon after that, like the next day, Apple informed South by Southwest that they weren't going to be sending anybody to come down there to Austin because of coronavirus. Now, Apple not going was going to be a big loss. Obviously, Apple's a big player, but they had some projects that people were really looking forward to getting a peek at. One of them is a movie directed by Spike Jonze called The Beastie Boys Story. It features the band members, the remaining band members, or surviving band members, which is Mike Diamond and Adam Horowitz. And they were going to do a panel. Now, this is not going to stop it. They already have a date that's going to premiere next month on Apple TV, but it would have been a good lead-off for them. There's an animated music series called Central Park that's coming on Apple TV, and it's the executive producers are the guy from Bob's Burgers and Josh Gad, who also produced Frozen. You know him also because he's on Avenue 5. Yeah, Avenue 5. I watched the first one, and I really liked Veep. It's by the guy people who made Veep. Talk about Avenue 5 later. Not later in this show, but later another time. But I stopped watching it. Anyway, that's Josh Gad's deal. There's a docuseries that has to do with smart homes. Apple's pitching it as a never-before-seen look inside the world's most innovative homes. That was supposed to be pitched down there or premiered down there. We're going to miss that. All of those things are probably still going to run. Apple had also scheduled a screening of a political coming-of-age documentary called Boys State. And they acquired this at Sundance, along with A24. And A24 is a company out of New York. You've heard of these movies. Uncut Gems, that was that Adam Sandler movie. Hereditary, Lady Bird, Moonlight. A24 puts out good films. They are good indie films. And so there was a lot of anticipation for why A24, which has been very successful, and Apple would buy this documentary film, Boys State. We don't know what's going to happen with that. So, hours after Apple said, okay, we're not going, Netflix pulled out. So, Netflix had 5 films that were supposed to be screened at South by Southwest. One was a feature film, a drama called Uncorked. The other were 4 documentaries. And Netflix has some great documentaries on it. They were called, the ones that were going to be screened are called A Secret Love, LA Originals, Mucho Amor, Mucho. Oh, my Spanish. And Have a Good Trip, Adventures and Psychedelics. I don't know what the first 3 are about, but Adventures and Psychedelics, I have a pretty good guess. Anyway, those are not going to be seen. But the most high-profile event that Netflix had planned was a panel with Kenya Barris and Rashida Jones. Rashida Jones is Quincy Jones's daughter, who is very, very talented. You know her from Parks and Recreation. She played a character, I think, named Ann Perkins. She's been on episodes of Blackish. She was in a Black Mirror, I think. Or she wrote a Black Mirror. She wrote that one, Nosedive, with Bryce Dallas Howard in it. That was pretty good. So anyway, she's multi-talented. She's not just a comedian or an actress. She writes and she produces. And she has an upcoming series called #Black Excellence, which is a highly anticipated sitcom series that's going to go on Netflix. And so I don't know if the fact that they don't go to South by Southwest is going to affect when it's released or not. Probably not. I think most of that's in the can. Then, like the next day, 3 major music groups, Sony Music Group, Universal, and Warner Music, they advised their employees not to go to South by Southwest at all. They had a growing concern over coronavirus, and sources close to the situation have said that they've all been advised not to go. So once that got out there, Starz pulled out of South by Southwest. They told their people not to go. And so after that happened, Lionsgate, which is the parent company actually of Starz, they pulled 3 movies they were going to screen there, and those movies one was a thriller called The Quarry, which I'm looking forward to. It's based on a novel that I haven't read, but it has Shea Whigham and Michael Shannon in it, both of Boardwalk Empire fame. And if you know those actors, you know that anything that they're in is usually pretty darn good, especially if it's a thriller. A movie called Arkansas featuring Liam Hemsworth, Vince Vaughn, Vivica A. Fox, and John Malkovich, who I've already said is one of my favorite actors, was going to be screened there. That's not going to happen. And there's a movie called The Lovebirds with Issa Rae of Insecure and Kumail Nanjiani of Silicon Valley. Those 3 movies will not be screened. I don't know if that's going to affect their release date. We'll see. So after all that, the next day, South by Southwest just said, F it, it's canceled. Nobody's going to be here that anyone wants to see. So they canceled it for this year, which is really going to hurt the city of Austin. I love Austin. I've only been there once. It was a town that a lot of people said to me, you'd love Austin, and they were right. I do love Austin, and it's too bad because I know they're going to take a big financial hit because that event is not going to be there. So we'll see how this affects the entertainment world in the coming year. You know, maybe this stuff is still going to run, but South by Southwest and MIP TV are 2 places where a lot of these production companies like to get a read on when and how they should release their productions. Next, we're going to talk about how Sony is going to try to monopolize your TV screen. Be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Okay, we're back. Are any of you all gamers? Do any of you play with joysticks or enjoy doing that? I'm terrible at it, so I don't do it. But I'm bringing it up because the games now are such productions that they're being adapted into movies, and some are being adapted into series. And there's one that's being adapted, an adaptation is being developed of a PlayStation game called The Last of Us. And it's under development at HBO. Now, Chernobyl creator Craig Mazin, which, as you all know who watched Chernobyl, great success, fantastic series, he's going to write and executive produce this thing, along with Neil Druckmann. And he's the writer and the creative director of the game. So the project is in co-production with Sony Pictures Television, and it's in association with PlayStation. So this is the first television series from PlayStation Productions. And that's why I'm bringing it up because, you know, PlayStation in the gaming world and Sony have been quite innovative. And with all of these people involved, the guy from Chernobyl and the creative director of the game, this should be kind of impressive. It's being developed by a company called Naughty Dog, and it takes place 20 years after modern civilization has been destroyed, which, you know, most of these things are dystopian, and those of you who play the game, I'm not familiar with it, but, you know, I guess that's what the atmosphere is. There's a guy named Joel who's a hardened survivor, and he's hired to smuggle Ellie, she's a 14-year-old girl, out of an oppressive quarantine zone. You know, there's always a quarantine going on during this dystopian situation, which we might be in, I guess, if things go take a bad, left turn with the coronavirus. What starts as a small job soon becomes a brutal, heartbreaking journey as they both must traverse across the U.S. and depend upon each other for survival. So, sounds like to me a jazzed up Walking Dead, but hopefully no zombies will make an appearance because I'm done with zombies. I never was down with them much after Night of the Living Dead, but we have our full fill of zombies and the like with The Walking Dead, World War Z, and I guess 28 Days Later. The HBO series is going to cover events of the original game, which was written by Druckmann, as I said, and they say it has a possibility of additional content based on an upcoming game sequel, The Last of Us Part 2, which is due out in May. So, somehow I think that the probability of additional content that mirrors the new part of the game that's coming out in May is 100%. What do you think? I think so. Well, let me know what you think of The Last of Us. If you're a gamer, especially if you play The Last of Us, let me know what kind of show you think it'll be. Email me at podcasthoward@gmail.com or tweet me at FletchDC, FLETCHDC, or at GSMC_television. I'd like to know what you think about the prospect of this series, and also when it finally gets created, tell me what you think about it. Also, if there are any other games out there that you gamers are playing that you think would be good as a web series, let me know as well. Well, speaking of another brutal and heartbreaking journey, I want to talk about AJ and the Queen.
Yes.
Because AJ and the Queen has been canceled after a single season at Netflix. Now, the show's creator is RuPaul, of RuPaul fame. And he confirmed the news via Twitter. He said it's the end of the road for AJ and the Queen. And Netflix has decided to not extend our trip across America. Thank you for all the love and support. We're so very proud of the work. I'm sure that was a big disappointment for RuPaul. Anytime you can get a series to run that mirrors one's life so thoroughly, I would imagine that it was a pretty nice paycheck for RuPaul. He still has the drag race though. Now, I've never watched the series, and I've already heard it already. When I speak a little cynically about some series, or maybe have an opinion about a series I've never watched before, I will tell you, number one, like I said, I'll keep it real. I will tell you up front, I have never watched the series before. And I'll also tell you that there's too much content out there for me to watch everything. And I don't want to bore you all with just what I watch. Now, I like to talk about those things, and I will talk about them, but I want to cover the gamut. And so, I have to go to other sources to find out what these things are about and then talk about them, because I do have a point to make here. But let me tell you what this series is about, or was about. This series featured RuPaul as Ruby Red, a down-on-her-luck drag queen who travels across America from club to club in a rundown RV, with her sidekick, AJ, played by someone named Izzy G, a recently orphaned, tough-talking, scrappy 11-year-old stowaway. Again, I would have liked to have been in the room. When this was pitched, I would have liked the person who pitched this show to pitch mine, because it would get greenlit. As the two misfits traveled from city to city, Ruby spread a message of love and acceptance, which touched people and changed their lives for the better. Plus, RuPaul performed a killer musical number in every drag club, because, as we all know, every city has a drag club.
Yes.
Now, again, I'm going to confess, I didn't even know this show existed. Which I'll say off the top, I believe is difficult to pull off, considering that RuPaul is kind of hard to hide. But apparently, Netflix happened to pull that off, because I've asked several people on Twitter and elsewhere if they knew about this show. Everyone knew about the drag race. When I asked them about the RuPaul show, because that's how I phrased it, because I didn't want to set them up, and I mentioned AJ and the Queen, they didn't know what I was talking about. They thought it was like, don't you mean BJ and the Bear? No, I'm talking about AJ and the Queen. Although it might not be anyone's fault that no one heard about it. Because there's too much content right now, like I said, for everyone to survive. And I don't know if the show was any good again, but it's hard to get viewers if no one knows you're there, you know? By the way, that's why you guys have to tell people about this show. There are tens and hundreds of podcasts going up every month. So if you like me, you like what you hear, we need you have to bring listeners, and we need your ratings. So please go to iTunes right now, put this on pause, go to iTunes and rate this podcast and mention me when you can. Hopefully it'll be something good, and email me and tweet me with your criticism. Give me 5 stars on iTunes. Okay, that's enough of that. Why I brought this up is I'm wondering whether there's a sudden saturation of drag and trans shows on the air right now. Now, by saturation, listen, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. In fact, I'm glad that there are those shows. These shows are coming on and becoming more mainstream. It shows the reality of our society. There's some representation. I'm all for that. But what I'm saying is that if the content doesn't differentiate itself with quality writing, acting, or narrative, it becomes like background noise. So while a show like Pose on Fox is groundbreaking network television fare, makes stars of its of the actors on the show, and before that, RuPaul kind of mainstreamed the drag and gender blurring stuff with RuPaul's Drag Race. Just having a character on the show just because of their queerness, you know, that's no longer going to get it done. And, you know, it sounds like AJ and the Queen was going to be RuPaul and a kid with a musical number, you know, and I don't think that's going to quite get it. You need more than that to sustain a show now, because there's just too much competition out there on the little screen just to rest the plot on the adventures of a pretty man in a dress. So, I'm sorry that got canceled. RuPaul will do just fine. I don't know about this kid, but the kid has a lot of, you know, chances, and putting a RuPaul show on her resume won't be a bad thing. But I brought it up because when I see shows get canceled, that might have been a good show. Again, I didn't watch it. But when I read the synopsis or the synopsi of many shows, or synopsises, it has to be synopsi. Well, and there's nothing really that interesting. I just know that it's not, there's no wonder to me why it got canceled. And that brings me to Dispatches from Elsewhere. A show that's aired 3 episodes so far that I want to talk about when we come back. Don't go away.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now, don't bother, what's hot on Netflix, and everything in between. That's gsmcpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
All right, we're back. I've been informed that the plural of synopsis is synopses, es instead of is, like synopsis, which writing it, I know that, but somehow when I speak it, I didn't know. And I guess there's some sort of, you know, disconnect. My neurotransmitters have been scrambled through my college days, I guess. Anyway, what I want to talk about this segment is Dispatches from Elsewhere. And, you know, this is a show, like, it just started a few weeks back. I've watched the first 3 episodes. I've been impressed. It's not, you know, I will rate it at the end of this so far. So I'm not going to, I'll tell you up front, it's not perfect, but it's a very interesting show. And I have some compliments for at least some of the things that they're doing. The cast of Dispatches from Elsewhere it's pretty stacked. You know, you got Jason Segel, who is the creator of the show. He wrote the first 2 episodes, directed the first 2 episodes, and I'm pretty impressed with his talent. Andre Benjamin of Outkast, Sally Field, who you know from being Sally Field, and Richard E. Grant, who's been in several British productions. I love him as a character actor. He's very good. And, it would be hard for any one of those people to stand out. They, even though Jason Segel is the focus of the show, they all get a pretty good share of screen time, and they don't upstage each other. It's really good. But the standout star of the show, in my opinion, at least in the beginning of it, is this newcomer, Eve Lindley. And Eve Lindley plays a character named Simone, who might just be the best character of the show, definitely the most complex so far. She is some sort of, she's eccentric, almost in a manic way. Seems to be very intelligent. She helps Jason Segel's character, Peter, get out of his funk and sort of, keep his focus through what's going on in this show. The show is I'm not going to spoil anything, but it has a lot of twists and turns. It's, it's pretty mysterious. I guess you can get that from dispatches from elsewhere. I mean, elsewhere is pretty non-specific. And the second episode is, the episodes are titled, at least of the first episodes are character names. The first episode was Peter, which is Jason Segel's character. The second one was titled Simone, and it dives into her character even further. Now, why did I lead this segment with the RuPaul thing? Well, the character Simone is a trans woman, and the actor, Eve Lindley, is a trans woman as well. Now, you would think an unknown actor playing a trans woman would be handled as kind of a minor supporting character with that lineup of actors that they have. Usually those characters, unless the show is specifically about it was a story about a trans woman or a story, about somebody who cross-dressed or something like that. Usually if they're in this story, and that's their character makeup, they are a side character. They are a minor supporting character. And you would think that, especially since this actor is relatively unknown. Instead, the opposite seems to be happening. The show follows these lonely people, and yes, Jason Segel's Peter is the focus. But right now, I would say that Eve Lindley is the breakout star of the show. And in fact, in reading about it, she's received positive reviews almost across the board. Guy Brian Tallarico, writing with RogerEbert.com, the late Roger Ebert, wrote that Lindley steals pretty much every scene she's in. And I would agree with that. I mean, she does. Now, while other trans women actors have turned this soil already, so to speak. You got Laverne Cox, whose character Sophia is a transgender woman who stands up for herself among the prison inmates on Orange is the New Black, has done this before in a show and become a very major character. So, I don't want anyone to think I'm overlooking anyone. There have been other actors as well, but I would say that Eve Lindley's character on Dispatches from Elsewhere looks like it's going to go a different direction, like it's going to plow another 40 acres or a different 40 acres. And I'm bringing this up not just because I think Dispatches from Elsewhere might be a good show in the long run, because it does have flaws, like I said. But I'm bringing it up because Jason Segel, he's written a trans character in his show that's really three-dimensional. And while we as an audience aren't supposed to forget her sexuality, he never ignores it. And it is part of the plot, at least, or of the backstory of this character. It's not ignored. It's not all that Simone is made up of. In fact, it's just a facet of her character. And it bears about as much, now this is only in 3 episodes. I don't know where it's going, but so far this is why I'm impressed. This facet of her character, the fact that Simone is a trans woman, is about as important to her character as if she were unusually tall, or of a different race, of her intelligence, or her hometown, or, if she was from a different country. I mean, it's just a part of who this character is. But this character is just not defined by her sexuality. And that's pretty interesting and refreshing. As the member of a group that often gets misrepresented on television, I'm black, a black American, I pay attention to how people other than, I would say, white Anglos are represented. You know, and this doesn't just go for people of color or people of different sexualities. I mean, I have been seeing how people from the South, white people from the South are portrayed. And now sometimes some of these things are accurate. Okay? You know, it'd be like saying, you know, are there aspects of characters that are black, that are LBGT, that are white Southerners, that are blue bloods, that are Asians, that are true representations, but they are called stereotypes? Do those things exist? Yes, they do. Absolutely, they do. But the key is, and I say this as somebody who tries to write characters, the key is not to make that what the character is. You know, and so while Simone, and this is what I think Jason Segel's done well, and I'm telling you, I never would have thought that I'd be here on a podcast talking about Jason Segel being a great writer, and I don't mean that I just didn't see him that way. And I'm not saying he is necessarily yet. But he's getting there, because he's written a character that is definitely, you know, unabashedly a trans person, but that's not what they are. That's just part of who they are. And that's the key to writing a good character. So that's what I see in Dispatches from Elsewhere, and I'm hoping to get more of that, not necessarily more of Simone. I think Simone's made her mark, and I hope that she continues to be on the show, but I hope that he brings that same depth of writing to some of the other characters. Sally Field hasn't really played a large part in there. I know she has some acting chops that she needs to put on display. They didn't pay Sally Field to be on this show just to be, you know, just to sit around and smile and play a retired lady. And Andre 3000, excuse me, I didn't mean to take some points away. He's a very good actor, and I expect more from him too. But while I brought this up again, and I guess I'm qualifying my criticism of AJ and the Queen, while I still didn't watch a single minute of AJ and the Queen, from the synopsis, or the several synopses that I read, it sounded a little bit more like Good Times to me than Blackish. And RuPaul, if you're listening, if I made a gross misjudgment about your show, I apologize. And I imagine Netflix will leave it on, and I'm not going to make a promise I can't keep, but I suspect I will give it a peek, and I'll get back with you after that. So you did just get canceled, so I don't want to lay it on too thick. Okay, I'm not piling on. I'm giving Dispatches from Elsewhere 4 chicken wings, only because they need to do more with the plot, but the character development is superb so far, and I recommend it. Next, I'm going to be debuting a new segment on my show where I welcome a guest, and we're going to talk about a show, and we're going to talk about, this time, HBO's Outsider, which had its finale last night. It's all done, and we're going to let you know our opinion in just a moment. Don't go away.
Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast. Together we dive into the world of sci-fi and science fiction. From episodes of Star Trek, Star Wars, to The Walking Dead, Resident Evil, all the hot new science fiction movies from the backdoors of Marvel or DC. The Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast. You'll never look at science fiction the same way again.
All right. Well, now this is a segment of the show. It's a new segment, and I hope it'll be a regular one because I want to have my friends from around the world come and talk to you about the shows that I like to watch and talk about on this show. And one of my friends who I have on today is somebody I couldn't think of a better person to be my first guest. And that is Valerie O'Neil. Valerie is a friend of mine from LA. Well, actually, Orange County. We're going to be speaking by Zoom meeting. So if she sounds a little echoey, that's because we're not in the same room. We're not even on the same coast. But she watches about as much television as I do, and we always like to share opinions, and I've always enjoyed and respected her opinions about entertainment. So with no further ado, I'd like to welcome Valerie O'Neil to the show. Val, how you doing?
Hi, I'm great. Thanks.
How are things in California?
Well, other than it being Black Monday with the stock market today,
Yeah.
That's a whole nother conversation, what's going on today. But yeah, things are great. Weather's beautiful today.
Yeah. Well, I guess the Black Monday kind of fits the show we're going to talk about. I wanted to talk to you about the HBO miniseries, The Outsider, that just finished its run. The finale was last night. It's an adaptation of a Stephen King novel. Val, you read the novel, correct?
I did, yes.
Okay, good.
As actually an accidental reading. I've been a big Stephen King fan my entire life, but we were on vacation. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you stay in a hotel where they have a library that's basically composed of books that people have left.
Yeah.
And this tattered copy of The Outsider was in that library. And it shouldn't have been that old looking because it's not a very old book. Anyway, I picked it up and my whole plan of not lugging paper books throughout vacation was ruined because I was immediately mesmerized by the book and read it.
Wow. Okay. So what did you think overall about the series and how they handled? I know that from what I understand, they made some changes to the story.
They did.
What did you think about it?
Well, I thought, actually, how sometimes you think that a book clearly is better than the film adaptation or vice versa. Mm-hmm. I think this is a situation where they both hold up. I would definitely recommend people read the book, and I would definitely recommend, if they're into this kind of thing, that they watch the series as well. One of the changes that they made was, to get right into it, okay. One of the big questions was, why would a detective that was very experienced arrest someone in full view of the town?
Right.
In the book, his son was at camp. He was away at camp. So you kind of wondered, this was kind of an overreaction. In the TV series, they killed off his son of cancer. Right. So his overreaction was more understandable.
Okay. So in the book, it kind of caught you by surprise.
A little bit. Why would he have done that? Yeah.
Yeah. I have to tell you, I'm a little ambivalent about the series. Haven't read the book. I thought the first 2 episodes were excellent. Jason Bateman, he directed those first 2 episodes.
Yes, he did.
I thought those were the best and creepiest episodes in the series. And for me, coming at it fresh, I kind of wanted it, and I love the acting. But the tone, to me, the tone just got kind of slipped away for me. And maybe if I'd known what was coming, like I read It. Now, this happens a lot with Stephen King adaptations, I believe. They're very hard to translate into movies because a lot of it's psychological.
I think what sold me, and I agree with you, the first 2 episodes, because I'm such a Jason Bateman fan. It's huge. I think what I really loved is the flipping of the Holly Gibney character, because she was not introduced until later in the book, mm-hmm. and she's been a character in some of his other books as well.
Right.
But the casting of Cynthia Erivo, is that how you say her last name?
That's correct.
A person of color, a woman that the Holly Gibney in the book was, I think, blonde and slight, and her only claim to fame was that she had this savant-like intelligence, and ability. But I think that the Holly Gibney in the series elevated the entire show.
Yeah, well, apparently Holly Gibney is supposed to be Lithuanian, of Lithuanian descent. That's why that character always was saying Isvikata when she was drinking. They just left that in there because it went along with the character. But apparently, before they cast Cynthia Erivo, they were going to make it up just like she was in the Mr. Mercedes books. Here was what my thought was, and again, I'm watching this thing as a black person, and that's, I think, and first thing I'll say, Cynthia Erivo, excellent. I think she'll probably be recognized for this performance. I would think it's worthy of recognition, and I will say that character, along with the Ben Mendelsohn character, but definitely Cynthia Erivo. I mean, that's what kept me involved, attached to the series. That said, the one thing, if I have any nitpick, and I have a few nitpicks because that's my character, but my one nitpick is that this was supposed to happen in a little town in Georgia. Is that right? Am I right about that?
Yeah, I think so. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now,
and then there was travel to Texas, and when she went on the
right. But I'm going to concentrate on this Georgia town because first thing, I didn't see anybody else of color in the entire production. not even in the background. Not even at the chicken wing place. Nowhere. Okay.
Oh, see, I wouldn't have even been aware of that.
And so Cynthia Erivo's character to be so peculiar and black and female in this little Georgia town. Okay, granted, I understand that the characters didn't exactly all take to her, lovingly, but she still, her idiosyncrasies along with her race, I think would have been a little bit more off-putting than it was portrayed in this particular dramatization. And if there had been more black people around, I would have accepted it more. But she stood out like a sore thumb, and I was like, really? People are
Speaking of thumb, what's with the fingernails?
Oh, I don't know.
Did you notice her fingernails?
Yeah, I did.
She had these really weird long fingernails, and she was sexual, and she was so different than the character in the book.
Yeah, she was. Now, does the character in the book, I did a little background research, and Holly's described by Erivo in an interview as neurodiverse, being close to Asperger's. Mm-hmm. Is she described that way in the novels?
You know what? I don't remember. Okay. And I Marie Kondo'd my book collection, so I don't have the book anymore. Mm-hmm. So I didn't even have it to go back to, because I was when I first started watching this, because they introduced Holly Gibney much more quickly, I immediately wanted to look in the book and see what the deal was with her in the book, and I didn't have the book anymore, so I don't know.
Now I feel sort of guilty because I was sitting there watching what I do, because I go to bed so early because I wake up at like 3:30 in the morning. I record these episodes. I DVR them, or I do have them on demand, but I still use the DVR. And when I wake up at like 3:30 and I have my coffee, that's when I watch these things. So I actually watched the episode this morning. And when I was watching it, I was making these notes because I knew we were going to have this conversation. I was killing this last episode, Val. I'm sorry. I was like, oh no, it was bothering me. And again, I know that I'm probably hard to please, especially with these King things, because I don't think they translate well in live action. They just don't, because I know there's a lot going on in people's heads that you really can't do on, translate.
Well, I would say the mounting horror for me, my memory is that it was much more intense in the book.
If this show had been on another station, I'm not even going to name one. If it had been on another station, I would have probably wouldn't be as critical. I give HBO a high bar, so sometimes I grade them kind of hard. I'll be right back with Valerie O'Neil and more about HBO's Outsider right after this.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
the Jack character so much. Was he in the book?
Who's Jack?
Jack the guy, the police officer who was shooting him, the sniper?
Oh, yeah. You know what? I couldn't tell you. I don't remember him from the book.
Okay.
You didn't understand him? Well, yeah,
I didn't understand again, and here it is. It's going to go with the Cynthia Erivo woman of color thing and all of that. He was such an a-hole and a good old boy that how he bonded with Cynthia Erivo to the point where he is like going to fight this thing from this monster so he can save her was unbelievable to me. I just didn't buy it. Now some people probably did, and that was the story. But, she guns down all these people, and then she comes out like the magical Negro and says, go to hell, and he stops. Come on. I'm sorry. Those types of things got to me, but again, I'm grading it too hard. It was on the surface. It was exciting television. It was. But I just didn't understand he seemed like he did other things. He was fighting it. He wasn't a willing participant. He was being forced to do everything he had to do.
Right.
But he went above and beyond to protect Holly. And I was like, what is it? Why is he doing that? I just didn't understand that.
Well, one thing that we haven't mentioned as far as nitpicking is concerned, and I am actually, you're saying as a black man, well, I'm saying as a woman, I feel bad saying this.
Okay.
But don't even tell me that Ben Mendelsohn and Mare Winningham were married.
Well, yeah.
It was weird.
She was she was
perfect by herself.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they were not believed as a couple at all. First of all, I happened to Google their ages.
Yeah,
and there's a 10-year age difference.
Yeah.
And again, as a woman, I'm embarrassed to be saying this, but maybe I've lived in Southern California too long. I'm just really,
Well, you have, because it's never stopped me before. But the thing is that they were an odd match. They were an odd match. And that was kind of hard to believe. Ben Mendelsohn, I will say, he has mastered the two people I did like. I love Cynthia Erivo's performance, and Ben Mendelsohn. I don't know of any other actor who can put on that basset hound face. It's a face of revulsion and fear and skepticism all at once. It was really cool. He did a really good job.
I think he can carry almost anything he would do. I think he's such a good actor.
Now, did you see that series, Bloodline?
The series was Bloodline.
Yeah.
But you thought of it in your head, didn't you?
Yeah. No, I had
to Google it.
Yeah. Bloodline, which he was very good in.
He was really good. Yeah.
Very good in. All right. So, but the other thing that I'm going to say all my nitpicks and I'll get them out of the way. The other thing I didn't understand is I didn't understand how the monster was getting electricity in the cave because he had these lights on. They didn't really show that. I mean, I had to guess that maybe the guy brought in some batteries and somehow the monster knew how to hook the batteries up to the socket somehow, which I don't even know how to do, but El Cuco probably knows how to do that. I just didn't know. I did wonder why he needed lights when the guy was in the store getting all those lamps and stuff. And that answered that question. They go in the cave. The cave, El Cuco has been roaring at Jack previously, okay? But then they go into the cave and they can't make a sound or it's going to cave in. I didn't understand that. And then they get in there. This guy, all of their friends are dead outside. They go in there to see El Cuco, who they know all the horrendous things he's done, and they're talking to him. I'm like, what are you doing? They're just talking to him. I just would have shot him. That's all I'm saying. I would think or done something.
Well, why do you even think he's dead?
Well, obviously, that's that. Did you watch the after credit scene, right?
No, I did not.
Oh.
No, I watched this late last night and I did not watch it.
So when they walked away, okay, because look, this is what I think. I'm going to spoil something for you then, but I guess it's not a big spoil, but because the last scene was Ben Mendelsohn and Mare Winningham at the grave, right?
Right.
And they walk off. And so the note I scribbled to myself was, oh, my ending would have been something clawing up out of the grave. I was like, and I thought to myself, I was like, that ending sucks. And then they had like about 30 seconds after it, they had an end credit scene where Cynthia Erivo is in the bathroom and she looks in the mirror. And of course, Jack, the specter of Jack, appears behind her. She turns around, he's not there. And then they show her on the laptop looking up the fact that they were going to reopen the case for the Jason Bateman character.
Right.
And they pan down and they show her arm, which has a scratch on it.
Oh, perfect.
So, but I didn't understand, again, when they were down at the cave, when she took that knife and stabbed him in the chest, when he was laying down. Mm-hmm. I'm like, this person understands El Cuco better than anybody else. Why is she even getting near this thing? I mean, it seems like the closer you get to him, the more likely he is to scratch you.
Yeah.
I just didn't understand what her thinking was. But anyway, so I guess we're supposed to believe, because she had that hallucination, that scratch was the scratch of El Cuco and not a stalagmite. But that's what my thought was. Cause I was like, I was just disappointed. I would have preferred, not preferred. It would have been more believable to me if Ben Mendelsohn had gotten scratched, because he didn't understand. He never really believed until the very end. She knew better. So I'm like, of all the characters, how in the world is she coming out there with a scratch?
Yeah, this is making me really frustrated that I don't have the book anymore, because now I'm really curious how they wrapped it up. Yeah. I do know that she killed him in a different way, but I don't know. I would love to read the last chapter of that book. So
anyway. Well, I'll probably read the book now. The only other note I wrote down was that this has nothing to do with anything. Is that chair that they burned because El Cuco left the fingerprints on it? We had those exact same chairs in the 70s around our kitchen table. I mean, yeah. I've never seen.
But a devil never sat in yours, did he?
I don't think so.
I hope not.
Think so, but we gave them away. Maybe somehow they ended up on that set.
They ended up on that set. Yeah.
Yeah, somehow. So, do you have any other comments about the outcome?
Just that we didn't really talk about Terry, Jason Bateman's wife, Glory Maitland.
Oh, yeah.
Julianne Nicholson?
Yeah.
Didn't she do a good job?
Yeah. Well, she's always good she was on Boardwalk Empire.
Yeah.
Anyway, but no. Yeah, she did. She did well. In fact, from what somebody told me who said they read the book, that character is pretty minor in the book. Is that correct?
Yeah, I do not remember such a angry. She just did a great job of being just pissed at the entire situation.
Yeah, it was a very restrained performance. I mean, it was, other than the time she kind of went off on Holly.
Well, yeah, the meeting that they called her to.
Right.
She says, this is what you've been doing. Yeah, she couldn't even believe it. And I realize I am not nearly the critical thinker that you are when I am watching. I am so into the story. But one thing I thought was interesting, I have to say that my memory of the book, I think they kind of downplayed the sexual nature of the crimes with these kids that El Cuco did. Okay. In the series. I think it was a little more horrifying in the book.
All right. Did you see Parasite?
Yes, I did. Like the first week it was out. Okay.
I as you probably know from Facebook, I just saw it this weekend with Joan. Just like in Parasite. Okay. In Parasite, the guy, the son gets hit in the head with a stone twice and lives. So Ben Mendelsohn decides, I'm going to hit the outsider with this rock. And that's going to kill him? That was the other thing. That was my last nitpick. I was like, he gave this long speech about, you're playing possum, huh? And blah, 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 which I didn't understand why you're sitting there talking to this supernatural being, giving him time to recover. That just seemed to, I don't know. It was didn't make sense. But then he's looking around. I'm thinking, what is he looking for? What is he looking for? Oh, I know. I'm going to pick up a rock and hit you in the head with it. That'll get you, El Cuco. It was just bad.
Well, I would agree with you. I actually do talk during movies, during television shows. I can't help myself.
Right.
I'm sitting by myself going, that's not going to do anything.
Right.
I agree with you.
Right.
That was dumb.
Right. Well, I was thinking, didn't you see Parasite? It's not going to kill him. So, all right. Well, Valerie, thank you very much for being on the show.
Yeah, this has been fun.
Good. So thank you very much and have a good day out there. Out there, it's like, God, it's still morning out there.
Yep.
All right. Take care,
Time
Val.
for lunch.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Take care of yourself. Bye.
And I would like to thank you for listening to the GSMC Television Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm Howard Fletcher, and I'd like to ask that if you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review for me. It really helps. And also, if you could please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, that would be a big help too. And also, if you want to hear more about shows that you watch, email me at podcasthoward@gmail.com or tweet me at FletchDC or at GSMC_television. Thanks a lot. Have a good night. See you next time.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Television Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.